usual, and nothing has changed. I am Doc Luis Fonseca. Spent 22 years on active duty as a U.S. Navy hospital corpsman. During my time, I enlisted in 1999. I was involved in the operation of the Battle of Al Nasiriyah, which subsequently got me awarded the Navy Cross. And next up is my partner, Nate.
And I'm Nate Emery. I'm your token grunt. I did 33 years of DoD. 22 years of those were in the Marine Corps, and then the rest were as a contractor and a government civilian. And I'm a veteran of Desert Storm and Operation Restore Hope in Mogadishu, Somalia. And tonight, our guest, 3 years later, is this. He was our very first guest back in 2022, and Father Nigel Mumford is on with us. And Father Mumford is an international speaker, author, and the founder of By His Wounds, a ministry works with combat veterans, and he uses his own experiences in combat to help relate and help other veterans through their trauma and any moral wounds they may have. Um, he has combat experience in Her Majesty's Royal Marine Commandos, where he served as a drill instructor at the Commando Training School. He's one of the co-creators of the Welcome Home Initiative, providing services to help combat veterans heal from PTSD and other moral injuries. He's also an ordained reverend in the Episcopal Church, and he believes the healing grace of Jesus Christ can help those men and women who suffer in silence with combat-related post-traumatic stress syndrome. And next is going to be Doc Barry, and he's going to tell us how we got around to having Father Mumford on with us.
Okay. Hi, folks. I'm Andrew Barry, also known as Doc Barry. I am a psychologist and psychoanalyst, and I specialize in working with veterans and first responders fighting with post-traumatic stress disorder. So anyway, a number of years ago, I joined as a supporting member in an organization called the Royal Marines Association, and I fired off an email asking what the association might have as far as resources for post-traumatic stress disorder. I told them what I do and so on and so forth, and they said absolutely nothing. However, you might want to fire off an email to Nigel Mumford. He is over in the United States, and I did so. And it was a great first conversation, um, not soon to be forgotten. Um, Nigel and I essentially, and I'm not putting words in your mouth because you and I have talked about this privately in the past. He and I have kind of the same job. We just approach it from very, very different angles. And I have seen what he can do. I've seen footage of him with veterans, and on his first podcast, which I wish we could pull out of the can with us, his gifts are godly, clearly superhuman, and we are blessed to have him with us tonight. And I've learned a great deal from him. And whenever I've chimed in periodically from the psychological standpoint of PTSD, he's been very welcoming to whatever I have to say. And that is righteous. That is so righteous. In any case, welcome back, Nigel. I'm supposed to come up with a thought-provoking question, and I'm actually almost moved to tears right now. Just grateful that you're back here with us.
Can I just comment on that? What the Lord showed me recently is to take a tear. You need to force a tear out so we can do this. So can you push a tear out? And then what you do is you take your thumb and then you anoint yourself with your tears. It's incredibly calming. Jesus wept. And women in Jesus's time had little bottles around their necks and they would collect their tears. And you know, big boys don't cry, but we do. We really do cry. So it's a good way to remind us of Christ.
Absolutely, we absolutely do cry.
Yeah. So have a good cry, Doc.
You know, you've seen me do it. You pulled it out of me. I'll never forget that day.
Amen.
You sensed it, you reached right in and yanked it right out.
Right out.
That was
Well,
just
the
eerie.
thing was, as a drill instructor, it was my job at the Commando Training School to make grown men cry. And now I'm a priest. I still make grown men cry.
You're very good at it too.
Bless you.
By the way, Luis's in Phoenix is running around in the background, so he will be popping in and out of view.
Yes, I apologize about that. I always want to give everyone my full undivided attention, but I got producer hat put on right now. I got Papa hat put on right now. So
Yeah. So, one of the things we were discussing before you came on live is we were discussing whether we call you Reverend, we call you Father, we call you Nigel, we call you Mumford. How do you like to be addressed?
Sir Nigel will be fine. No, just Nigel.
Nigel. All right.
Reasons of grandiosity. Just Nigel.
got knighted while we've been away. Yes, I love it.
Not really. Just
Oh,
grandiosity.
that's great.
Nigel's fine.
I don't know why,
So-
Nigel. I'm sorry, Nate. It's like old friends catching back up. I
Yeah.
don't know why when you said that, Sir Nigel, it made me think of have y'all seen those commercials where you can buy like a 1 square foot of land in Scotland or
In
something
Scotland.
like that?
Right, yes. And become a lord. Yeah.
Right.
My lord has a few more square miles than we do.
A little bit more, right?
Mhm.
My lord owns all the land.
Mine too. Yeah. Bless you. And as I was saying earlier, I feel very inadequate with all these beards. It's just, it's. Oh well. Oh, that's much better.
So, I've forgotten because it's been 3 years.
3 weeks.
Let's say again?
3 weeks. No,
Oh
3
no,
years.
3 years. Yeah. So how did you come to join the Royal Marines? I mean, I know everyone's going to be wondering, how do you get to from Royal Marines to being ordained? But we like to start kind of in the beginning. What was it that drew you to being a Royal Marine?
We'll start with the Bible. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. No. Genesis. We'll go from Genesis to Revelation. No.
Yeah, what's your Genesis 1:1?
I always wanted to be a Bobby, a policeman, and I tried to join the cops as a cadet, and I kept failing the math exam, so they wouldn't take me. So I thought, what the heck, I'll join the Marines. And as a kid, I needed to prove myself. I was a wimp. I'd been beaten up at school many times, and I wanted not to ever be beaten up again. So I did the toughest thing I could possibly think of and joined the Marines. I had family in the military. Who's doing that? Thank you. I had family in the military, but they were all officers, and I went in as a grunt, although we don't call them grunts. But anyway, so I did my basic 7-month training, which was very similar to the SEALs. Then I went off to Northern Ireland for a year, which was terrific. I crossed the castanets. I crossed the Atlantic 4 times, courtesy of Her Majesty's ships. And King Charles, Prince Charles at the time, was my helicopter pilot for 3 months. That was a lot of fun. What was the question? I'm going down a rabbit hole. What was the question?
Oh, it was just what made you decide to join Royal Marines?
Yeah. That was it. I think it was clearly that I needed to prove myself.
That sounds familiar. It's
Yeah.
a common story. The difference is when we're younger, we give a bunch of other reasons, right? But the older we get, the more honest we become about why we joined.
Very much so, yeah. And naively, I thought the troubles would be over by the time I passed out or graduated, as you say, this country. And that was in 1972 when I graduated, March. And of course, it's still going on now. So that was crazy. How naive was that?
Yeah. That was going to be my next question. What year you were over there?
I was there in 72, 73, and 74. I grew up
Oh, wow.
I grew up very quickly. The saw a lot. saw a lot of death. My best friend got shot. I was involved in 5 explosions. I got shot at 3 times. I was hit in the head once, which, you know, kind of covers a lot of mileage. I should talk to you a bit more, Doc. You know, no, I'm fine really, but just above the eye. In fact, we don't know what hit me, but I was dragged from the front line and stitched up on the street, which was rather unpleasant. My face, you know, the head wounds bleed a lot, so they didn't know who I was. But anyway, that's another story. So it came to an end rather abruptly when I was told that 3 of my recruits had been killed by an IED in Northern Ireland. And having spent 7 months with these young men and, you know, dragged them through basically, when that happened, the thing I feared the worst happened, that one of my lads would be killed and 3 got killed, as I was told. And when I heard the news, I couldn't speak. I couldn't make any noise at all for a week. And then I stuttered for 6 months. It was very unpleasant. Of course, so when I went back to the commando training school, not being able to speak properly, I went to the medic and they, you know, put me in a hospital. And
it's amazing how the body reacts to trauma sometimes.
Yeah, as one of the therapists said, you know, how amazing it was. My job was to shout at people, and I couldn't speak. It's like God took my voice away. Yeah. It was amazing. And then like 5 years later, it took about 5 years, and I found out that those recruits were not mine at all. They were somebody else's. And ironically, the officer in charge of that group had a very similar experience to mine. I never met him, but we spoke briefly, and he cracked like I did. But I got to tell you, a rather funny anecdote, that when I was seeing the commandant of the commando training school, he suggested they didn't want me to leave the Marine Corps, and they wanted me to go into signals. And here am I stuttering, and I said to the officer, "Sir, I don't think that's a good idea. You want me in signals?" And I stutter, and he laughed and he said, "No, that's probably a good idea. Probably you should leave." But yeah. Anyway.
Let me ask you something, Nigel. As far as the Troubles go, I've tried to do at least some reading about that period of history. I don't know if this is an apples and oranges question or if it is by degrees. The way I see, or as I hear about the Troubles, it's similar to, it's like a British Civil War.
Wait.
Okay, so good. I wasn't out of line with that question. The only thing I could think of is North versus South here in this country. Brothers shooting at brothers, you know, shooting at your own countrymen, and what that must have been like. So it's unspeakable.
Well, ironically, I always thought I was Scottish. I used to play the bagpipes until I got the swine flu. I got a kilt and everything, you know. And then I found out that I'm Irish too. I'm 21% Irish, and that's like, oh, geez. Everything went crazy. But, you know, I vowed I'd never go back to that place. And I've been back 4 times, ministering all 4 times. Wow. And it was an incredible experience. And, you know, I spoke at, thank you. I really vowed no way. And the Bishop of Down and Dromore encouraged me to go. And I spoke at St. Anne's. I spoke at many churches. And one was the cathedral in Belfast, St. Anne's Cathedral. And on the left side, there were 100 Catholics. And on the right side, there were 300 Protestants. And I preached. Wow. Yeah. And I stood up in this very large pulpit. You got this staircase of stone, semicircular. I stood there and gave my sermon. And when I'd finished, I walked down to the bottom step and just collapsed in tears. It was overwhelmingly, you know, it just really got me, because it was nasty. You know, any war, we've all served, and we've seen the dark side of human nature. You know, man unkind, as I like to call it, and it makes us grow up really quickly.
Yeah, too quick. Yeah, something I was just thinking about, because I didn't remember before how you'd lost your ability to speak for a while, and then when you got it back, it didn't come back all at one time, and then you end up doing the Father's work, right? So it just brought to mind Zechariah a little bit. right? Losing his speech until he does what the Lord has for him to do.
Absolutely. And ironically, I walk with a limp. So, I've wrestled with God too. So it's like, okay, I'm cool. I've got the message. Yeah.
Yeah, looking back, it's easier to put it all together all the time.
Yes, it really is. Yeah.
So, Nigel,
Well, as I pointed out to you and on other occasions, Nigel, I think, as usual, you're just trying to raise Cain of one sort or another.
Well,
And-
my thesis, my baseline of this was nobody was there to help me. Nobody. I got a female psychiatrist who had no knowledge of the military whatsoever after I left the Corps, and every day I saw her for weeks, every single day, and it took me a long time to, when I look back on it, tell her what it was like being a Marine. Anyway, I got there in the end, but when I see other veterans suffering, knowing, because I can draw on what I've experienced and thousands of conversations with veterans, I know, I know what we've been through. And it was 9/11 actually that pushed me into this. When 9/11 happened, I ended up going down to the pile, as it was called, about a month, maybe less, after the horror of 9/11. And I was ministering to a lot of people that day. And somebody said, Nigel, you've been recycled. So we take all the horrors of the past and we get recycled. And that's where I am. And I've written a few books. I'm not allowed to say how many I've written because my wife tells me I'm being boastful, but it's actually that many. But anyway, I did write a book called After the Trauma, the Battle Begins. And I think that's reversed, but I'm sorry. But if you watch this in a mirror, you can see it the right way around. And she came up with this logo, which I think is really clever, about the frayed knot, because that's PTS in one shot. But when I think about the Bible, and I'm sorry I can't remember the Bible verse off the top of my head, but it was Jesus says we should take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ, and that's the basis of this ministry of healing trauma, healing memories, and taking them captive, and not allowing the enemy to still have power over us.
Yeah, it's I've been hearing that same thing from some of the small groups when I'm in. People remind me of that. They're like, it's kind of hard to see. It's hard to see on your own sometimes, right? But then somebody else will point out, like, hey, while you're caught up in your own head here, there's a wedge between you and God. You're not as close to God as you could be,
Right. Thank you for flashing that up. I appreciate it. Well,
you're very welcome,
awesome.
Nigel. Anytime you bring anything up like that, I'll definitely try my best to pull up a link where we can find books or whatever. So
thank you.
And we'll definitely put the descriptions in our when we upload it to YouTube. We'll put the description links on there as well too.
Would you like to put all the other 8 books up too while you're at it? No.
Hey, brother, if you send it to us, we'll absolutely be more than happy to help advertise all that.
You're very kind.
You just click on his author name and it'll show them all to you.
Thank you. But looking back after I'd cracked, my troop officer came to see me when I was in hospital and apologized because he saw that I was going off the rails and didn't do anything about it. And when I finally cracked and I couldn't speak, funny enough, I was talking to my sister last week, and the first time she told me what it was like to witness what happened to me, and she's never spoken to me about that since 1978 when I cracked. And ironically, she was working in a psychiatric hospital at the time, and scared her half to death because, when you lose it, it wasn't a good experience for her. But finally, we spoke about it. It's amazing the depths of raw pain that can ruin our lives. But with God, we've been recycled. You take lemons and make lemonade. Doc, you're emotional.
I remember.
What are you doing there?
Yeah. Well, I remember when you and I had our first conversation on the phone. I was telling you about whole struggles of academia and why I had to, and it wasn't my idea, put myself through 2 doctoral programs.
Mm.
And I heard that shift in your voice.
Mm.
And you said, you know, Andrew, God's recycled you.
Mhm.
And I burst into tears. I'll never forget that day. And then I told you what happened to me when I had my service. That's the last thing I wanted to talk about, but something told me I needed to. I'll never forget that day. Thank you,
Yeah.
Nigel.
Bless you. Bless you. It's very real. You know, the problem is really, I mean, you know, my wife, I had to teach her, you know, stuff. Never go boo, you know, never wake me up if I'm asleep, be in the next room. You know, if you need to wake me up, get a long pole, you know. And probably the only thing that's left over now is what's called an exaggerated startle response. So I got to tell you, if anybody comes up behind me, I leap out of my skin. And being a priest, that's very embarrassing. So we had with 2 podiums, 2 produced 2 areas where the priests normally sit, where the public or the congregation can touch you, you know. And I'd be sitting there praying, and somebody would put their hand on my back and go like this, and everybody would laugh. So I thought, you know, I got to deal with this. So I went up and sat next to the altar with my back to the wall, with a rail where nobody could come anywhere near me, and that's where I sit now, you know. But I got to tell you, rather funny really, because somebody suggested, well, my wife suggested I put a name tag on my back that says exaggerated startle response, combat veteran, don't touch. So I wore that one day, and 8 people came over and said, "What's this on your back?" eight times. So that's not working. So we're still trying to work out a way. A friend of mine who's a psychologist.
Yeah, high voltage, don't touch.
Yes, don't touch. It's like kick me. You know, why don't you just have kick me on the back? And a good friend of mine who's a psychologist suggested I get a service dog that sits facing the wrong way and would alert when people come up behind me. But we haven't done that yet. I wanted to get a Chihuahua. But,
you know, I'll tell you, my service dog is trained to do that.
Really?
Yeah, and I didn't think much of it. It was kind of so I had them trained specifically for me. And when I gave them the list of all the tasks I wanted, almost at the very end, it's kind of on a whim, I asked them if they would train them to face the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And I had no idea how much anxiety that relieved until I started going to the Pentagon and waiting at the bus stop all the time. And I was no longer, didn't have my head on a swivel all the time because he was facing the other way watching for me. It's the same way as if I'm in a room with Doc Barry or Doc Fonseca, right? If they're behind me, I just automatically, I don't even have to think about it. It's anyone behind me. But if they're in front of me, the whole time I'm wondering who's coming up behind me. So I understand that. And yeah, I'll tell you, it was probably the most helpful thing about having him. And that wasn't even the primary reason why I got him. It was very helpful. And because at the very least, they'll stand up when somebody starts approaching, you know. So then it kind of cues you in, and then you're ready for it. So.
I was working with a vet recently who had a dog, and the dog alerted during our conversation, and I knew we were getting too close to an issue. But the dog was so sweet; it made a whimpering noise, came over and put its paw on my leg, and I tell you, I burst into tears. Dog Berry. I mean, I just lost it because that dog loved his master so much, just pure love, you know. We backed off, and we brought him back to reality. But on another note, I was talking to a lawyer a while ago. His dog was on the floor, and I saw him leave the room. And I said to him, you know, it's okay, just come back. We're not there anymore. And he looked at me like, you know, when his eyes glazed over, he said, my wife and my psychiatrist can do that. My dog knows it. How did you know it? I said, because I've been there, done that. I know when we leave the room. I know when we disassociate. Yeah, anyway. But it's ironic. I'm working with 2 very smart theologians who are priests, and I'm not a theologian. I'm a heartologian. So I live and move in my heart, you know. So I don't have anything after my name except I'm late for lunch, you know. So, and I don't have anything in front of my name except Reverend. So And sometimes I'm being a Marine, and sometimes I'm very irreverent, but that's beside the point. Yeah. But I just want to help people, you know. But I got to say, when this book came out, I'd given a talk in 2009 in London at the request of the Royal Air Force, and on post-traumatic stress. And when I finished my talk, this fellow in a suit comes up and said to me, the general would like to talk to you, in a very British upper market, you know, chatting. And I said, which general? And he said, you'll find out in a moment. So I followed him to this anteroom, and there was this general in all his general uniform, you know, and he said, hello, Nigel. And I came to attention immediately, you know, I was wearing my collar. And he said to me, he said, you know, Nigel, I report to God, the Queen, the Prime Minister, and my wife in that order. And I stood there a bit befuddled, and I thought he's messing with me. So I took a step forward, I put out my hand, and I said, sir, I like you. He cracked up laughing, and he wrote the foreword to this book, General Richard Dannett. The most senior.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, isn't that cool? The most senior officer in the British Army, nobody higher than him, wrote the foreword to this book. And it's more of a prayer than anything else. Yeah, awesome. So, you know, when I think about being recycled, what I've learned from my own experience and what I've learned interviewing thousands of veterans, you know, this program we do, the Welcome Home Initiative, we've put over 1,500 veterans through this program. And when I think about what we've done and how this ministry has been recognized, much to my surprise, my goal has always been to save a life. And when I look back on the lives we've saved that I know about, particularly in suicide situations, and the ones we don't know about, but there was one story, if I may share, where I just finished the program, one of the programs, I think it was number 18, we're up to 42 now, 43. But I just finished this 3-day retreat. And, well, very briefly, at the beginning of the retreat, we were having lunch before the program started. I saw a chap with short hair sitting by himself, and I went up to him and said, can I join you? He said, yes. I said, are you here for the program? And he said, what program? And he said, well, we're doing a program for combat vets. I said, were you a veteran? He said, no, but I was in Afghanistan as a government contractor. And then he shared with me what he did. So basically, after a firefight, he would clean up what's left of the bodies, etc. And he started to tear up, and I saw that he was very disturbed. And then I said, look, I'd like you to join the program. He said, well, I didn't pay it. And I said, he came up with all these blocks why he shouldn't do the program. And I shared with him, look, you know, it's my program. I designed this. I want you to join us. But I didn't pay. There's no charge. You know, it's been paid for because people have paid for this program. And anyway, he assimilated very quickly. At the introduction, we sit with our spouses, and we have an introduction. What's your name? Where you're from? Who you serve with? What arena did you serve in? And your nickname, just as an icebreaker. But no war stories at that point. And when it came to his turn, I introduced him, saying, look, this fellow didn't carry a weapon, but government contractor. Without me saying a word, everybody stood up and went up to him, shook his hand, and said, welcome home. And he was assimilated immediately. But here's the thing, it was beautiful. I mean, I was in tears. I'm glad you brought up tears. But you know, we were all weeping and hugging him and welcoming home. So listen, at the end of the program, I'm done, having spent 3 days listening to war stories, serious war stories. I'm fried. My wife knows to leave me alone for 24 hours. I feel a bit like Jesus going off to be by myself because I can't take it. It's just too much, you know. And
so all the energy is left you.
What's that? Sorry?
Is that all the energy is left you?
Done. I'm done. Yeah, I have nothing else to give. Yeah. So I'm leaving this program, and I saw this fellow walking up to me with his backpack in front of him. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want to talk to you. But he came up to me, opened the backpack, and there was a .357 Magnum sitting on his clothes. And I looked him straight in the eyes, and I very slowly went in, picked up the gun, and unloaded. I said, what are you doing? It was loaded. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, Nigel, you saved my life. I came here to blow my brains out, not in the hotel, but it was a 600-acre facility. and he figured he could go into the woods, nobody would know, and he could just be eaten by nature. And he said, "You saved my life." He fell to the ground. I fell to the ground with him, and we hugged and wept. And that was purely God. I didn't know this fellow. I assumed he was part of the program, but there he was sitting there by himself, and God had me sitting next to him. And that, talk about a divine appointment, Anyway, I don't want to brag. I just want to let veterans know that this is very real. And heck, the question I put to many people is, do you know when post-traumatic stress was first invented or realized? Do you know when it was, gentlemen? Take a guess.
Well, I'll go all the way back. I go all the way to Cain and Abel.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, it's actually 800 years BC, before Jesus. The first reference was ancient Greek warriors coming home, their wives, girlfriends, mothers.
Iliad?
What's that?
Is that in the Iliad?
Probably. I don't know, but that's when they realized
That's not
that.
familiar.
Yeah, but they it wasn't called PTSD, of course, in those days. Well, it's not called PTSD now. It's called post-traumatic stress. The D has been dropped by the military. But this is as you know, it's a very real issue. But I would argue that it's the enemy still ruining our lives. And how dare the enemy? And this is where I get righteous indignation. How dare the enemy, the devil, and the enemy that we face in real life? How dare they have power over us? And that's why that verse in the Bible, to take captive every thought, to make it obedient, blows me away. Actually, Doc Lewis, would you mind looking that up? I've been trying to find it, and I can't remember where it is. But if you go to BibleGateway.com and put in take captive in the NIV, it should probably, I think it's 2 Corinthians or 2 Chronicles, 2 Corinthians something, I think, but I can't remember. It could be 2 Corinthians 10:4 or 10:5. Anyway, as you're looking it up.
Working on it now, gents.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hit me. I'm going down various rabbit trails.
No, what couple of things. Now I've kind of, but first and foremost, there's what Nigel's talking about.
There it is, 2 Corinthians 10:5. Well done. Listen, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. Isn't that lovely? Think about that as we wake up at 3 a.m. and we're there in the firefight, and we're there in the hand-to-hand combat, as we're there remembering our buddies getting shot beside us. And we need to take captive every thought. It's an incredible Bible verse.
Yeah. One thing that you said earlier, Nigel, and you're like, "Oh, I'm not trying to brag. I'm just trying to talk to veterans or even active duty members, that this is real. This is,
Oh, yeah.
I think if there's anything that anyone in this rightful world could ever brag about is being able to be there for a fellow brother or sister in their darkest of times, because that's not an easy thing to do. A lot of people say it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of veterans and active duty members and even first responders always will hesitate as well too. A lot of people will say, "I'm here for you. Oh, speak to me. Let me know what's going on." But I think we've all have seen it where either we've opened up our mouths or we've seen a fellow brother or sister open up their mouth, and the rest of the room's eyes just get wide and everyone's stuck there like, what the fuck do I do with this information? So, Nigel, I think if there's anything you can brag about is having
It's a privilege.
Yes.
It really is. The way I look at this is, for a moment, I have a soul in my hand. Just for a moment, I have a soul in my hand. Let me put some meat on those bones. Years ago, I was working with a Roman Catholic veteran from Vietnam who reckoned he'd conservatively shot 32 people, but he thought it was probably 10 or 20 more than that. And he was beating himself up on the point that on the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill, which is actually technically thou shalt not commit murder. And this guy had translated it as murder and condemned himself, that he would never go to heaven. He's going to end up in hell. He was miserable. He was sad. So what I did was I opened up the Bible to
Ecclesiastes.
yes, thank you. Ecclesiastes 3. Thank you. Where it says there's a time to kill and a time to heal. I handed him the Bible. I didn't read it. I handed it to him, and he read it out loud and went ballistic. He screamed, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I done? But he was screaming not at me, but he was screaming at the church for nobody telling him that was in the Bible. So his focus was on not killing people, but it actually says there is a time to kill and a time to heal. You know, if we didn't kill in World War I and World War II, I wouldn't be here. You know, I'm not blonde and blue-eyed, so I wouldn't be here. So when we look at it that way, the time to kill, and this man, his life changed dramatically, instantly. It was boom. It was done after he vented in anger, and of course that's one of the grieving when we think of the 5 stages, and the many other stages of grieving too, which is added to it.
What with that being said, what are y'all's thoughts on you know, we talk about wounds, physical wounds, mental wounds, emotional wounds, but now I feel like we're diving into the realm of moral wounds, and would and I definitely would love to hear everyone's opinion on this, but would y'all say a moral wound is probably the hardest? Sorry about Phoenix in the background, everyone. Would y'all think a moral wound would be the hardest to heal from, the most difficult, or anything?
Good question. Doc had his finger up. What were you going to say, Doc?
I recently have taken to bringing up the topic of moral injury in my sessions, and I'm in my about 90% of my caseload at my work, veterans and first responders. I do this like for 45 hours every week, day in, day out, and I hear about it chapter and verse, as we say. So I started recently reading out loud the definition of moral injury, and it's been hitting these men and women like a and they have to come to some sort of a reckoning with what they had to do, not only to keep themselves and men and women alive, but what they had to do to the enemy, whoever that enemy may be. And one guy was telling me what it was like to kick down doors, go into one particular dwelling, kicking down another door in there, and it was a little kid's bedroom. He was about 8, he told me, and he said, "Here I am, covered with bullets, grenades, weapon, looking like some sort of a monster." And he said, "I'll never forget that kid's face, ever." Oh, and while we're at it, this particular patient of mine just so happens to be, I believe it is, half Iraqi.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just
you know,
wow.
What you were asking, and then I don't remember. I already forgotten my short-term memory. If you asked it or if Luis asked it, but the question that was asked, and then partially the way Doc Barry answered it, I've been telling people, and I've been telling them this is my own construct. I'm sure somebody else has thought of it as a name for it, but I don't know what it is yet. And I've told them that I kind of lump everything into 3 different buckets. And the first bucket is the easiest bucket to deal with. It's the things that you observed happen, whether it happened to somebody that you know or somebody that you don't know. So whether it was one of your Marines or one of the enemy, right? To me, that's the easiest thing because you had absolutely no control over that. The second one is things that happen to you, right? When it happens to you, you have a little bit more control on how you deal with it, you know, and as you get older. And then, but I told my my psychiatrist is that the third one is the worst one, I believe, and that's the one where I think a lot of times moral injury falls into, but it's the things that you did, and like Doc Barry was saying, whether you did it to the enemy or the civilian or something on accident, or even if it was justified, the things that you did are the hardest ones to deal with. Because, and as you get older, what I found is it gets even harder as you get older, because I keep relating what I did when I was 18 or 20 years old, not to the 18-year-old that I was then, but the 53-year-old that I am now. And that's, I think, what makes it really tough. But that's kind of the bins I lump them into, because I know that there's a lot of overlap when we say moral injury or mental injury. But I don't know. So if anybody ever comes across the term for that construct, I'd love to hear it. But
when I think about that now, being a priest, my job was to teach Marines to kill or be killed. Bottom line. And now it's a privilege to help people to heal and be healed. I love to go boating, and everybody says, do you fish? I can't kill a thing. I love eating fish, but I can't kill a fish. I couldn't catch a fish. I can't kill it. I can kill mosquitoes. Don't like them too much. But, that's it, and what are those called? Those big creepy crawly things in the south, whatever they're called. Anyway.
Cicadas?
What?
You talk about the cicadas?
Yeah, no, not that big. They're slightly smaller in the house, whatever they're called.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember. And I live in Virginia too, but I can't remember.
I can kill one of those.
Well,
but, having seen people.
It's called a mother-in-law.
Well, that's another story. Yeah, I tell you what, if it's not one thing, it's your mother.
It was afraid that you were going to say that.
I've lost my train of thought. I can't. No. What are they called? Cockroach. I hate cockroaches.
Oh, okay.
Oh God. But I can kill one of those. But I'd love to go fishing. I loved fishing as a kid, but having watched people die horrific deaths as you have, but also as a priest, I've watched some beautiful deaths. Absolutely incredible, holy deaths. But when you see a guy screaming through his mum having just been shot in his heart, what happened with that case? He was in a Land Rover. His flap was up driving the Land Rover, and he got shot in the heart. The bullet went right through the flak jacket. The flap closed, and the sergeant major who screamed at this kid, who didn't take cover, he ran into the road, kicked him, and told him to take cover. Didn't know he was already dead. And that sergeant major, we never saw again. He went off to the nut house, broken. The things we see, when I think of a woman, I don't know whether I should tell this story because it's very, very graphic. Maybe not. Can you cut stuff out of this or not? Can you edit this?
No.
Not off the live. So unfortunately,
I think it's too bad to share.
I would say, Nigel, tell it all.
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, this is true, but
well,
remember.
Okay, I'll share it because
what we're doing here,
right?
Saving lives. That's why we tell these stories.
Absolutely. So okay. So one of the programs we did, this woman had a service dog, and she would use the dog as a defense. She wouldn't join in any of the breakouts. She was combative. She was she didn't assimilate. She was just distant, And to be honest, I got rather annoyed with her. I didn't let her know that, but the whole team was like, this woman's disrupting everything, using a dog as a defense mechanism. So another case where we just finished the program. I'm done. I want to go home. One of my team says she wants to talk to me. So this woman comes in with a dog. She sits down and told me her story. And I felt so bad because I didn't know. Obviously, I didn't know her story because she wouldn't assimilate at all. She was so distant. So she was a fuel tanker driver in a convoy. And at one point, and I'm told, I don't know whether this is true, but I'm told that female veterans, military, have a pistol and they're told to use the last round for themselves. I don't know if that's true. I can't verify it. But in this case, she was driving the tanker and 24 kids, 9 years old and younger-ish, as she said, ran in front of a tanker to stop her from driving. And she was on the radio, obviously, with the commander And he said, drive. He said, you just got to drive. You got to drive through these kids, which she did. And she was very graphic in telling me what happened, particularly as she had two 8-year-old twins. And when I heard that story, my heart just melted. When I heard that what she had to do, I just melted, and I apologized to her for thinking, come on, woman, come alongside me. But when I really heard that story, how horrific. She's, young, 23, 24-year-old, maybe a bit, I've somewhere around there, but with two young kids. And to hear that just broke my heart. So, what do we do when we're ministering to others? What do we do afterwards? As I said, I come back and I just need to be quiet and just be alone with Christ, just as Jesus did. But that particular story, I hope I haven't gone over the line, but, this is very down and dirty. We're dealing with lives, chronic lives. And that story, it hasn't haunted me, but I often think about it because I was a bit harsh on that woman. But when I heard her story, my heart broke for her. I think that's my point. We can't judge a book by its cover. We have no idea what's gone on inside these people. And when I heard that, I felt so bad because I judged it. And when I heard her story, by golly, I was. Oh.
I think you and I have talked about this before. So now we can do it again out in the open. When they start acting this way and you find yourself getting riled, which is a human response, by the way, ask yourself at this moment in time, what is this other person extremely angry about and or just beyond terrified of? Because their response, this woman's response in the early stages had nothing whatsoever to do with you. You didn't do anything wrong.
No.
He does this with everybody.
That defense
now if we can precisely. So now what we can do is just wait for the moment for her to finally let the walls down.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing with all four of us. We are all very easy to talk to, whether or not we have a beard. And all we have to do, mates, is we have to wait. And sometimes waiting a very long time. As an example of that, one of my guys I've been seeing for a number of years, it took him 6 years working with me before he was finally able to tell me what it was like to become a father. He has one child. And he said, this is going to make me sound so cold. He said, when the charge nurse handed my daughter to me, I was supposed to feel all kinds of things. I felt nothing. It's like, okay, let's just go home. And I told him, and anybody else who's listening to this is called, my friends, my brothers and sisters, this is called emotional numbing. It's totally normal. You're reacting totally normally to an unbelievably abnormal set of circumstances.
Exactly.
And it took a tremendous amount of guts for this guy to finally be able to feel it. Speak of the seeming coldness in his personality. You're not cold. It's just on super deep freeze as an act of self-protection.
A normal reaction to an abnormal situation. And we need to tell ourselves that and remind us of that. If we didn't react this way, there'll be something wrong with it. Pun intended. Yeah.
You brought up.
Was that?
I was just say you brought up something there that reminded me of my current therapist. First, he did exactly what Doc Barry did, and it caught me off guard when he asked me. And he said, "What are you afraid of?" And I was like, I suddenly realized I'd never thought about that, right? And so he kept talking to me through it. And then it took about a half hour as we talked through it. And then what it came down to was, I think this is probably common, but we don't usually think about it. But I told him, I said, I'm afraid that if we talk about this, that I'm going to come apart. And he goes, what do you mean come apart? And I said that I'm going to go inpatient and I'm never going to come out again, And had he not asked me that, I never would have thought that deep about it. And then because he asked it, it gave him a bunch of information that he didn't have that he needed, and I didn't realize that he needed, and it caused him to actually slow down the pace of what we were doing. And so I was grateful that he asked that question. And I forgot the second part. I was gonna something related to what you just said, Nigel. Man, well, it'll come back later on, I'm sure. But I did want to thank you though, because I've been at the same church for 12 years before you came on the webcast, and nobody had ever told me about Ecclesiastes 3:3 either. And the first time I ever read it was the night that you were on our webcast 3 years ago on Memorial Day, or not Memorial Day, soon after Memorial Day. And you brought it up, and I read it, and it's actually my license plate now. And I share it with all the veterans in my support group meeting, and it has the same effect for every one of them too. It's like it's a relief that you didn't realize you needed until you read it.
Amen. Oh, you've made my day. You've made my day.
Yeah, because a lot of us now have all understood that the mistranslation, in the commandments is actually supposed to be "Thou shalt not murder." We get that,
Right.
But that still doesn't put you together on the other end of it. And then reading Ecclesiastes 3:3 has been a huge difference. To the extent that it'll be my first tattoo. It's going to go on my trigger finger.
Oh wow!
So.
Wow. Talking of trigger fingers, I realized that we anoint with oil on the forehead. The first person I anointed is trigger finger, and now it's code. Whenever anybody does a Welcome Home initiative, I say, "Do I need to anoint your trigger finger?" And they think about it, and they'll either say yes, confirming that they had to use it, or no. I've anointed bare hands. I've anointed thumbs from a 50 cal, but the bare hand ones, those really touch me, So to anoint as a priest, to anoint a trigger finger, and when I pray for people, I keep my eyes open, and it's incredible what you see, the emotions, the reaction. But when we really realize that there is a time to kill, there always has been, and again, Hitler notwithstanding, and all these other tyrants, we wouldn't be here, for goodness sake. And I don't think at the time he didn't like people with beards, did Hitler? I don't know. Sorry, that was an attempt at a joke. The bearded ones shall go left, and the non-bearded ones shall go right.
That's okay. We're not distracted by your soft skin.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for that. Oh dear. I also think of a young woman whose mother brought her to, she was probably 22, 23, 25, brought her against her will to one of our programs. She came in livid. I mean, she did not want to be there. By the end, halfway through, she gave her life to Christ. She got on her knees and totally submitted. And the healing, it was beautiful. That woman was transformed, beautiful, absolutely lovely. And I was going to mention doorknobbers. You know what a doorknobber is, Doc Berry?
Yeah, they're called doorknob comments. When a session ends, the patient is literally leaving my office. Their hands, they're clicking, and out of their mouth comes the thing they could have opened the session with.
Yeah. By the way. So another quick story. I had a U.S. Marine, little guy, very small guy, in my office. Classic doorknobber. He was a sniper, and he actually was assigned to my old unit, K Company 42 Commando Royal Marines, which made it very poignant to think that I'm talking to somebody who was in Afghanistan as a sniper. Anyway, there was a nasty firefight, and there were two Royal Marines in the court in no man's land. And this guy's a sniper, of course, who's supposed to keep his position. Well, he didn't, because these guys were bleeding out and screaming. This guy came out of his hole. He went and picked up these two guys who were both over 6 foot, and he's a little guy. The adrenaline in him was extraordinary. He put one on one shoulder and carried the other one on his hip and ran away from the enemy, carrying these two guys. He went to the medic. There was a helo actually running, and he just ran at the helicopter through the two bodies that were still alive in the helo. And then luckily the doorman grabbed his yoke and pulled him on board, and he was furious. He said, "No, I've just deserted my post." He said, "No, you're coming with us." We don't have time to let you walk back or run back. Luckily, they put him on the healer. He's sitting in his chair, strapped himself in, and he felt something warm going down his back. So he put his hand up the back, absolutely covered in blood. Immediately, they took the flak jacket off, and he had a bullet hole in his heart, an entry wound and an entry wound and no exit wound. So the door number was, I've been dealing with this man, you know, everything he'd done, and the door number was, oh, by the way, I've got a bullet in my heart. What a classic door number. Luckily, I didn't have another session, so I dedicated the next hour and a half talking about and praying for this Iraqi bullet, which is still in his heart today, as far as I know. And that, you know, these, you have many stories too, but it is so humbling to help people unload the power that they've been through, but to know that they can be healed of that. And what a privilege that is.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's because people allow you into such a deep place in them, right? Such a vulnerable part of their life that I mean, sometimes even you know, if Christina was here, she's out studying right now with some friends. She's in her doctor program, but she would testify and tell you, yeah, there's things that I know Luis has either told like Doc Barry or told like some of my other friends that we've been either in combat with or whatever, that she knows that she, well, she doesn't know what she doesn't know, right? But she knows that there's just some things that I haven't told her. Just I don't know. I don't think it's out of fear or I don't know. It's just out of because she was in the Navy too. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Just we all have
May
those
have,
little bits of our life.
Well, you know, when we
I may
think
have
about,
an idea about that.
go ahead.
I may have an idea about that. And this is something I've shared with you guys, Nigel. I don't think I've dropped this one on you. In addition to all the garbage that's on Facebook, there's an occasional nugget. And one is about PTSD. And the meme is a skull, is a human skull. And it just so happens that it's the Marine Corps emblem right there. And it could be the emblem of any of the other services. And at the top of the meme, it says, I'm not the knight in shining armor that you wanted. And on the bottom, it says, I'm the monster that you needed. Just talk about moral injury, things that you don't want your family to know, etc.
Yep.
And I make it very, very clear to anybody I know or anybody I'm working with that I've never seen combat or not. And I make it clear to them that when guys tell me what goes on in combat, which I have to hear about when I do nexus letters for their VA claims, that in doing so, it's tantamount to that person giving me a piece of their soul. And normally that is only shared with other combat folks. So when I hear what goes on in combat, I am being given an enormous gift and I am being given an enormous honor. And that is dedicated to all of those people and to the three of you as well.
Amen. Thank you. You know, years ago, I wrote what my personal description was of post-traumatic stress. And I wrote, the mind is witness to a catastrophic event. The intellect cannot cope with what it has seen. The body reacts physically under duress. The heart receives emotional scar tissue. The soul weeps. This mental trauma is a total body reaction to horror. And I think we're affected so deeply at the tissue level where we can't, and this is where moral injury comes, you know. What do we say at Christmas? Goodwill to all men.
Peace on earth, goodwill to men.
Yes, peace on earth, goodwill to all men. Yeah, but they're all mankind. And then I have added to that, what about man unkind? You know, and the problem is, of course, we're trained for combat. We're not trained to be deprogrammed, and it's still there. I know that for years, I would always look for sniper positions in rural settings. Because that's what I was trained to do. And for years, I'd be looking everywhere, hyper vigilant. And that's probably why I've got this thing about people coming up behind me. But somebody once said, be kinder than necessary. everyone you meet is fighting some kind of a battle. And I love this one by Jose Naroski. He wrote, "In war, there are no unwounded soldiers." So it affects us all in very different ways. And I think, you know, for me, I can't tell you how many times I tell people to be gentle with themselves. When we're suffering from PTS, what do we have to prove? Absolutely nothing. We've been to hell. We've got the battle still going on in our brain, and we need to take captive those thoughts, and to have people help us to take captive those thoughts, and to truly know that the war has ended, although it hasn't. We're still fighting. And I know that when someone comes up behind me and people laugh, they think it's funny. I mean, I'm kind of used to it. And my rector actually wants to announce it to 700 people in my church. I said, no, I really don't want to do that, you know. But, you know, it's embarrassing as heck. You know, maybe I should get a dog. I think I should get a dog. Get a dog. Anyway.
As far as humor goes, let me throw something in about humor. The first time Nigel and I were speaking on the phone, you know, it was getting to know you. And I admit I have an absolutely idiotic, juvenile sense of humor. I own it completely. The puns, the double entendres, the whole 9 yards. I've always been this way. And I said to Nigel, and I quote, I said, I hope it doesn't get on your nerves. And he said, how could I? How could it? It's like listening to me. But what I have found, there's the next layer of this is for first responders, it can be a very dark and twisted sense of humor.
Yeah.
And the categorical response, the generic response we always get is, well, for us, it's a coping mechanism. And what I hear in that is it's entirely true, but in a way, it's not the entire truth. It's too vague, it's too nebulous. So I started really thinking hard about that. And one day it dawned on me. It's the dark humor. It's it's a way of screaming. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Imagine a civilian stumbling across some god awful like motor vehicle accident where they see bodies, decapitations, uh, or like Pop who told me the young mother whose baby was killed in an MVA, and she hands the baby's body as well as brain matter to the medic, asking him to bring the baby back to life. Okay. All right. When civilians see that sort of thing, they scream because they're not trained, they can't handle it, they don't know what to do. It's over the scream. But first responders of any and all denominations and veterans, okay, don't have, do not have that luxury. They have to keep it together and do these unbelievably hideous jobs that nobody else wants to do and that very, very few people are capable of doing. And that energy, they have the human need to scream as well, but they don't have the luxury to do so. So, in my opinion, just my opinion, mine alone, their way of screaming is the dark humor. I don't know what you guys might have to say about that, but
Well, a thought came to my head right as you were describing that, Doc. Um, and so
More power to
you said something about, you know, first responders, even military personnel. We kind of just, I guess, maybe push through it and know that those are our duties. 1 second, please. Sorry about that. So we talk about, you know, first responders and all that, active duty personnel that have to either see some of the most horrific things that can happen in humanity, right? Um, but no one really ever trains us how to do that. No, like we've gotten good at setting up silhouette targets to kind of look like human beings, to maybe desensitize those those war fighters that have to pull the trigger on another human being, right? So that way, there was a big book that came out many years ago by a retired colonel who's also, I believe, a doctor. It's called On Killing, and he talked a lot about that, how we desensitize. But yeah, no one's really, even in the medical field, as a Navy corpsman, like I don't really remember any time any leader, you know, before the wars or even during the whole wars, ever sitting any of us down and just saying, "Hey, you're going to see things that you never knew the human body could could be blown into pieces of, right? Or come across. I mean, as a corpsman, there's things that I saw outside of combat, still within a combat zone, that were very horrific. I don't know if y'all have ever heard the stories of they punish children by dipping them in boiling milk or boiling water. I've had to treat young children that were subjected to those sort of things, right? I had to treat casualties that were riding in the back of a pickup truck in Afghanistan, and literally the truck just ran off of the edge of the cliff, and there was a rollover, and you can only imagine the the body, what happens to a small fragile, all the way from a 2-year old all the way to a grandfather, 80 something years old, we assumed was the grandfather. No, no one really sits down and talks to us about that, at least in my experience. I'm not saying it doesn't get done. I'm not saying it has never been done. I'm just saying in my experience, I'd never experienced that. And I was a corpsman for 22 years, and I can honestly say I never afforded that to my junior personnel either. It never came to my thought process to do that. Now that we're talking about it, I couldn't imagine how beneficial that could have been. A, secondly, and I don't know if you guys know if this happens or not, but I've never known for it to happen where a unit goes into a big firefight or a big mission like that, comes out the other side. We've lost some men, some women. We hold our memorial service, but you're right. It's just like back to work the next day. I don't ever remember, a senior leadership, whether it was an officer or an enlisted person, gathering the whole unit and just saying, "Hey, I'm fucking hurting from this. So if I'm hurting from this, I know you all have to be hurting too. Let's talk about this. We have some downtime. No one's attacking us right now. Can we stop and just talk about it?" Because even me as your leader, I need someone to vent to, because what we just saw or had experience isn't natural. Did it have to have happened? Absolutely. But it's just natural. So I wonder how beneficial that could be. It's just a thought. I don't know.
Well, to respond to that, I would say that our pre-Northern Ireland training was incredibly graphic, to say the least. I was quite surprised. And they would always do the medical side before breakfast. It was designed to make us throw up to the reality of what we're going into. They had slides, photographs, movies. I remember one photograph of a female bomber who'd lost both her arms, both her legs. And the photograph of her, he got us in the right frame of mind. But also after a firefight, well, it wasn't a firefight, it was an incident when my friend Tim got shot. I was telling Charlie we were waiting to cross a road, and we have a method of crossing that road. And just as I turned and tell Charlie he got shot, and when I think about that incident, when the Saracen armored car took him away, we stayed in formation to a safe area. We went to someone's house and had a cup of tea for 20 minutes. And then our platoon sergeant came in, said, "You guys okay?" And he said, "Yeah." And then we went out again on patrol, 20 minutes later. Our debrief was a cup of tea. and to chat together. We just sat there, didn't say anything because we were so stunned. You know, and what got me on that one in particular was that 4 teenagers. Well, I was a teenager. I was 18, but 4 probably 15, 16-year-olds came out and danced in the blood of my friend Tim, saying another effing British soldier's been shot. And I can tell you, to think about that moment in my life where my left hand, I'm left-handed, so I'm holding the trigger in my left hand and the stock in my right hand, but my left hand was pulling my rifle towards them and my right hand was pulling it away. I wanted to kill him. I wanted to shoot him. I had a round up the spout. Safety catch was off. I could have shot him, you know. And I'm thinking, you know, if I shoot them, either one of my Marines is going to shoot me or I'll be in jail for the rest of my life. And I was so mad, you know, and I couldn't express that ever. I never have done, but I don't need to now because I've spoken about and I've heard so many stories. But I thank God that he stopped me from doing that because I wouldn't be here. So, you know, that debrief that you've just described, I know that certainly in the 70s never happened, and I'm sure it's never happened. It would be nice in a perfect world. You know, I mean, heck, when we worked with the Dutch Marines, when it got dark, they put up a red flag. It's dark, we have to stop. You know, we did all our stuff at night. I mean, we you know, getting ready for a dawn raid. You know, we often were asleep during the day, ready for the night stuff. But you know, but there's one thing I'm thinking of. You know, the 1,000-yard stare. You're familiar with that, I'm sure. I used to go there a lot, and you know, in writing the book on trauma, Matthew 24:8 writes, "The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men." These were the guards guarding the tomb of Jesus, and they were probably the crack troops of the time. They weren't Marines, of course, because they weren't invented yet. You know, but we don't know that God was actually the first Marine. But we won't go there. We were invented on the following Monday after the first week after the day of rest. But anyway, you know, when we think of the crack troops of the time guarding the tomb of Jesus, making sure that the friends of Christ weren't going to come and roll away the stone and steal his body, they saw an angel and they freaked out and they became like dead men. That is the Vietnam stare. That is the 1,000-yard stare. And when I think about that, how awesome that is, because we all think this is, you know, post-Vietnam. No way. This is humankind, unkind, humankind. I used to say, you know, it goes back to the dinosaurs, but we weren't around by the dinosaurs. But I can only imagine if there were dinosaurs around when humans were there. You know, do you think they would have post-traumatic stress? Do you think they'll be like fight, flight? Oops, there's a dinosaur. Whoop-de-doo, and they go jump. You know, they eat him, and the other guy's like, oh, they ate me. They run away. You know, when we think of that fight-flight mechanism we have, which is natural, that is from God, the problem we're talking about morally, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, is that we've seen such horror. How on earth are we supposed to? How are we supposed to analyze it? How are we supposed to not react to it? And you know, when I think about what I was diagnosed with was good old-fashioned World War II shell shock. You know, and when I heard that, I was really surprised. I didn't know what PTS was in the 70s. Never heard of it. So I was diagnosed with good old-fashioned shell shock. And when you look at the stuff on the YouTube with shell shock, it's extraordinary the way that people are reacting. And according to my sister, that's what I was doing. So anyway, so we have to laugh about it. Thought.
This is a poem by an anonymous Navy corpsman that I've shared with Luis right along the lines of how do we deal with this? And it makes its round on Facebook every once in a while. And again, nobody had no idea who wrote this. So here we go. Teach me, instructor, I need to know more. Is being a doc different since I'll be in the Corps? Marine boot camp is over. Now comes your class. War will come quickly. Please teach me fast. Triage and cut downs, twist wounds and such. You say battle dressings will be my best friend. Hernits, hemostats, and it all starts again. Fakes, amputations, and of course CPR. White phosphorus and AK wounds. I'm with you so far. Give us your wisdom. Help us prepare. For when the wounded start falling, you won't be there. My tour's long over. Do you mind if I share some thoughts so that the next doc will be more prepared? There may be a Marine bleeding, and as you fight for his life, he'll whisper, "If I die, Doc, will you please write my wife?" Teach me, instructor, when the firefight is done, to ignore that the corporal had a wife and 2 sons, or when the booby trap smoke clears and the medvac's in. The man in the poncho is my very best friend. You've helped me save lives, but it's not over yet. Teach me, instructor, how to forget.
Beautiful. That's it. So Deuteronomy 24:5 writes, if a man has recently married, he must not be sent to war or have any other duty laid on him. For 1 year he is to be free to stay at home and bring happiness to the wife he is married. When you think about that, it's not a Bible verse that is listened to today by any means, but look at the compassion of that.
With the exception of Israel, they still observe it in Israel.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. And I think of my friend Tim, who got shot, the guy I witnessed being shot. He survived. It was a 2.2 Hornet, went under his flak jacket on his left, and the dum-dum round had been flattened, so it broke up in his spine, and he was unable to walk for years. But now he's walking and playing golf, which is extraordinary. But in England, when there's a death or an announcer, the local police go around to tell the bride or the next of kin what's happened. It's not a military person, it's the police. And my friend Tim's wife, I can't remember her name now, but she was doing the washing up after dinner, and she looked out the window and there was a police car, and she miscarried on the spot. So Tim survived, but his child didn't. You know, when we think of damage, what's it called?
Collateral damage.
So thank you very much. The collateral damage of that, serious collateral damage. And of course, the marriage ended pretty quick after that. But, there's collateral damage, but there's also collateral healing. And that's why we're talking, because I know we're bringing hope to those who are suffering with this and those who are listening to know that, please, you don't need to take your life, because God loves you. You've been terribly hurt, but how dare the enemy still have power over you? And we really need to address that with our fellow veterans. We've been there, done that, seen the movie, got the bumper sticker, and we've been recycled to help others. And when you think about that, that's a huge privilege. It's not a responsibility. It's a privilege to have a soul in your hand just for a moment, to hear other people's stories. And, what we do, we listen, love, and pray. And let me show you, I'm sure you know this trick, but do you know how I listen? I do this. Because I can't speak. That's how I listen. Shut up and listen to the story. Listen to what they're saying, what they're not saying, but more to the point, what is God saying in all of this? Because he came to set the captives free. To be reminded, I don't know where your faith level is, but to be reminded that Christ died for us, that we might have life and life abundant. And how dare the enemy ruin our lives? How dare we not have fun? Yes, I have to sit in a restaurant facing the door. Yes, I have to be very aware of extreme behavior around my personage. Yes, I have to be aware of people coming up behind me. Does the enemy still have power over me? A little bit, particularly from exaggerated startle response. But it used to take me 3 days to calm down after an incident. Now it takes me about 10 seconds. So after being triggered, I can come back to normal. Not that I was normal before, but I can come back to the present moment. And I tell you, being a speaker, I've been triggered. I've been had my startle response hit, like 2 minutes before going to the podium. So I'm walking to the podium in fight, flight mode, but by the time I get there, I'm calm. And how did that happen? I had a vision. I'm a priest. I'm going to talk about being a priest, but God gave me this vision of Jesus, of a flywheel. So when I'm triggered, this flywheel starts going, this is a bit like a big stone that just goes really, really fast, and I'm fight flight's inaugurated. But what I saw, gentlemen, was Jesus himself with his bare hands go stopping that wheel instantly with his bare hands, and I can come back to relatively normality, calm, without the fight flight trigger without being triggered. Basically, I can come to a point of stopping that because he helps me through this. And if that helps any of you, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that does, whether you have faith or not, to know that, heavens, we're not alone in this. You're not the first person to have this issue. And when I was sent off to hospital, I thought, I had no idea what was going on. And it wasn't until, 6 weeks later that I was actually told what was wrong with me, that I had shell shock. It's like, what? Didn't even know it. And I can tell you what, in that bloody hospital I was in, they'd have fire alarms once a week. And the fire alarm, oh gosh, they had to stick a needle in me to calm me down because of the fire alarms that I saw and witnessed after bombs in Northern Ireland. So, that was a trigger. Anyway.
Yeah. Nigel, you said something earlier, and I was glad you came back around to when you were younger. You'd said, you'd mentioned, you initially, at least, you went to therapy like every day, right, for some time. Now, was that exposure therapy, or was that to mitigate you spiraling and becoming worse?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't think it was exposure therapy because my therapist was very pleasant, and she had no idea about combat, but she was obviously good at what she did. Well, when I think back at that, not one of my friends came to see me because they were told not to, and that really, even today, that hurts because nobody was there for me, and that didn't help. Yeah, you're agreeing with me.
I didn't have. Well, I was unfortunately on the opposite end. So a guy I went to college with in a commissioning program with lost one of his legs, and he was in Bethesda Hospital. I just live in Stafford County, and so he wasn't that far away. But I was so busy focused on all my own crap that I never went to go visit him. And when they're in recovery there at Bethesda, like you said, nobody comes to visit, right? They might I'm sure his wife was there quite often, as much as she could, but she also had kids to take care of, right? And I had every intent of going up there, and I just never did. But a couple of years ago, I sent him a message. I said, I don't need you to respond to this, but I just want to let you know that I'm truly sorry that I never came to visit you in the middle of all that, especially, because I knew him before he was a combat veteran, and I had already been a 2-time. And then he decided to go infantry, and then I didn't. I changed my mind halfway through, and so I felt a lot of guilt about that, and then never going to see him and I'm sure he knew that I was right here in Virginia, And there's another person, friends of us here at the webcast that we met through Doc Fonseca, but he was a recent Navy Cross recipient, and it was during COVID. He was at Bethesda, and he said too after that initial visit, nobody came to visit him again. He was by himself the whole time. That's horrible.
Yeah, we need our friends. I'm glad you mentioned guilt. Survivor's guilt is a huge issue in this ministry, to say the least. And whenever somebody mentions survivor's guilt, that I was supposed to be on that patrol, and the lieutenant said, Smith, you were going and you're going to stay, and they go off and he gets shot, and the guy has classic survivor's guilt, and I would argue in that is that the person who died for you, how would he want you to live your life? He would want you to live it in fullness, not moaning and complaining that, oh my God, it should have been me, but living my life to the fullest for the person who died. And he can turn it completely 180, turn it inside out. The survivor's guilt to me is an absolute, it's self-condemnation. Romans 8:1 says,
it's like you said, it's the enemy. The enemy knows how to get to you, right?
Bingo, absolutely.
He convinces you that you're a piece of crap, that you didn't do this, and you start taking it on, and next thing you know, you're in a hole again.
Absolutely. Romans
Yeah.
8:1 says, "Therefore there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." You know, and if you are a survivor, if you have survivor's guilt, please talk to somebody about it and realize that you're alive because God wants you to be alive, and the person who died in your place wants you to live your life to the fullest, absolute fullest, to have fun, to enjoy this life. This is not a dress rehearsal. I'm preaching. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry at all. This is what I do. But I want to remind
It's second
you,
nature.
stop it. You know, I have two words for you. If you're moaning and wilting everywhere in survivor's guilt, I have two words for you. Stop it. Okay, seriously, stop it. Get on with your life and enjoy it, because the guy who died would want you to do that. I have no doubt about that. Can I get an amen, gentlemen?
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
You'll get a half one from me, and I'm a expand
Thank you.
why.
Well, that's all right. Half is better than nothing. Do I need to say shalom,
and-
shalom?
No.
Oh.
And this is why. No,
Yeah.
I agree, but as we all know, some things are easier said than done.
Absolutely.
And the reason why I
Yeah.
say that is, so my PTSD manifested in strictly survivor's
Let me stop.
guilt.
Hang on. Let me stop you right there. It's not yours. You don't own it, mate. It's not yours. But sorry. Go ahead. You
No,
disagree
you're
with me?
good. You're good.
Yeah.
So okay, so
Can you
the
just
way.
put the mic? You've gone very quiet. Put the mic. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Is that
That's
better?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So the way PTSD manifested in my life,
Thank you.
better, Nigel,
Don't own
was strictly survivor's guilt. That's
Ah.
exactly 100% what it was. I
There you go.
have no issues with loud noises. I have no issues with people coming up behind me. I think the running joke sometimes in my house is, everyone tries to scare me, but they can't scare dad. I'm really good at scaring everyone else. So mine strictly was survivor's guilt. And the shitty of a person that I felt that I was, due to my drinking, my drugging, all the other things that I wasn't doing to live my fullest life in remembrance of them. Because there's and you kind of hit it on that saying. There's that old saying that, um, live a life worthy of their sacrifice. Have y'all heard that, right?
Of course.
Well, when every day you don't feel that you're living up to this magical expectation on what you think the dead are probably thinking that you should live life, to me was my detriment. Was nope, you see, that's why I'm a piece of shit. That's why I have to deal with this. That's why fuck it, let me go drink some more, let me go take more drugs.
So that's the
Because
enemy. I'm a
right.
piece of shit. No, you're not. No way. No way. I take you to task on that. Look what you're doing now.
So
You've
true.
been recycled to help others. Come on, man. Stop it.
No,
Stop it. No. This is not right. This is not what life is about, mate.
right.
Come on. No condemnation. Stop it. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But you've taken it in reverse, and you're owning it. It's not yours. It's something. It's a normal reaction to an unusual situation.
Absolutely.
But it's what we do with it. And I'm hearing pain and hurt, and that needs to be readdressed. To know that, okay, I don't feel that way every day by any means. Of course, it's going to creep in, but
Right.
at the end of the day, you don't need to here's the thing. You don't need to prove yourself. It took me years to realize that I have nothing to prove. And I'll tell you how that came about. It was my birthday. I went to the mailbox. I got the mail. I had a card from my dad. As I was walking in my office, the fax machine had leapt to life, and there were 3 baby footprints coming out of the fax machine. This is a couple who've been trying to conceive for 11 years. I prayed for them 8 months before. They were being born on my birthday. There were 3 girls. If one of them was a boy, he would have been called Nigel. In those days, I didn't know about Nigella, the female version, so none of them was called Nigella, sadly. However, then I opened my dad's letter, and for the first time in my life, my dad said, "I'm very proud of you, son." I burst into tears. I fell to the floor. I was alone in this facility that I was running. I was in the fetal position, sobbing. And then I thought, why the heck have I spent my entire life trying to prove myself to my dad? And then I thought, I don't even need to prove myself to God. He loves me just as I am. And when that revelation came upon me, I realized I have nothing to prove. And it was that then when my life started. I was told at 7 years old, like Churchill was, Mumford, you're useless and you'll amount to nothing. Winston Churchill was told the same thing at 7 years old. And at 7 till, I don't know, getting my Green Beret, I thought I was worthless, you know. And heck, now God has recycled me. I'm a priest, you know. I've written 8 books. I wish that teacher was still alive. I'd love to go and see him and shake his hand quite nicely and watch him wince. No, not really. But, you know, I think we beat ourselves up way too much. The enemy's done a good job. Why are we, my point is, why are we allowing the enemy to still ruin our lives? No, that's got to stop.
Luis, I'm going to tell you a story.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a story about the ministry, the clinical practice. No, the foundation block of Luis Fonseca. And Nate was standing right next to me when this happened. It was at the Legion of Valor conference when you so kindly introduced us to some real war horses, real pieces of history. And one of the new inductees, whatever the proper word might be, the two of you were having a conversation. And this young man, and Nate was standing right next to me, said the worst part for him was seeing his best friend killed right in front, or something equally horrible. And I will never forget, as long as I live, what you did and how you handled it. You had in your pocket one of your challenge coins, and you reached around, took his hand, passed that challenge coin on to this young man. And you said to him, look at the edge of that challenge coin. For on the edge of that challenge coin are the initials of the 18 Marines who were killed that day. He looked at you, a gallon of blood drained from his face, and he said, 18? And you looked at him very simply and said, yes. That young man burst into tears, and you put your arms around him and squeezed the thing out of him. That is a righteous love, Luis, and I was privileged to watch that exchange. I hope I'm not on the shit list for telling this story now, but I think it's appropriate.
No, I appreciate you bringing that memory up, and Nick Jones is who you're talking about, Doc Barry, and he is a great warrior. He's for you that don't know him,
Yeah.
and Nigel, just to give you a little bit about him, he's a MARSOC Marine, so he's a special operations Marine. He was a young staff sergeant E6, rose to the ranks pretty quickly. I think at that time he was about 25, and yeah, unfortunately, out on a mission, and one of the 4 that ended up passing away that day was one of his best friends, and he's also is the youngest Navy Cross recipient from all of Iraq and Afghanistan war. Most recent as well was awarded to him not too long ago. And another thing that Nick and him and I speak enough that I know he won't be upset by sharing this part. I don't know if y'all two gentlemen caught this, and this is something kind of like what Nigel says, right? You know, this isn't for me to brag about anything I've done in life. I've just been very privileged and fortunate to be in someone's life when they just maybe needed to hear some words that I just had to say because I've lived through it. And he looked at me that day. No, it wasn't that day. I'm sorry. It was the next day when we're having breakfast together. We're sitting at the table and we're just talking about the whole award and everything that comes with it. And he straight up looked at me and he said, he goes, Luis, he goes, I just don't know how to wear this shit, man. And I looked at him and said, don't worry, brother, because neither do I. But one thing I do know is that we wear it for the guys that are no longer here because it gives us a platform to share their story. And that's something that Nick has said has been very profound for him. And I share that because I also tell a lot of people that I live comfortably with my award, not because of the action that I did that is written in that citation, but because of everything that's not written in that citation, because of everything that I know that the 175 Marines and Navy corpsmen went into a situation, and we sat there and fought for each other, for as many of us to come home. And now it's I tell them it's the privilege of wearing that medal is that we get the opportunity to speak about our brothers and our sisters that are no longer here. And that's how we continue the legacy of the Royal Marines, of the US Marines, of US Navy personnel, right? That's how our legacy continues. And that's how their life continues in this world until, and I am a believer that after this world, we will see each other again in much better circumstances than we can ever imagine here on this earth.
Yeah.
So
I've been to heaven a few times, and it's a beautiful place. One of the books I wrote is Dying to Live, How Near-Death Experiences Increase Our Faith. And if you want to pop that one up too, that'd be great. But I can tell you heaven is a lovely place. You know,
absolutely, I would love to, Nigel. What was the name of that again?
It's called Dying to Live by Nigel Mumford. How Near-Death Experiences Increase Our Faith. It's a story about 2009. Ironically, when I went to London to speak for the Royal Air Force, I picked up swine flu and was in a coma for 3 weeks and was out of commission for, heavens, about 9 months. I lost 68 pounds. And
swine flu is no joke.
Yeah, the H1N1 virus. So I gave up eating bacon until somebody said, you know, you should get your revenge and eat as much bacon as you can. So I lost 68 pounds on the swine flu diet, and I put on about 160 pounds since, you know. But you know, so did you find it? So anyway, while you're doing that, you've reminded me of two men that came to one of the Welcome Home initiatives. One was a young 22, 23-year-old. There it is. That's it. Dying to Live. It's a graphic book. If you have any fear of death, read that book. I spent a year of my life wondering what it was going to feel like to get shot, blown up, or whatever. And having been to heaven, literally in a coma, it's an incredible place.
But anyway, yeah, definitely love to pull it up. I didn't make sure because there was another book, same title by a lady named Susan something. So I just want to make sure.
That's me. That's not my
right.
No, my name is Nigel Mumford. Yes. There's a few books called.
Isn't that a song? My name is not Susan.
It's not Susan. My pen name is definitely not Susan. No, definitely not. But you reminded me of another story. One of the programs we did was this young U.S. Marine who was talking to his best friend 1 minute, the next minute his best friend's head disappeared. And this man was really, really traumatized, obviously. I mean, they were just chatting, boom, gone. Sniper took his head off. In that program, we also had a brigadier general from the U.S. Marine Corps who lost 800 men in one day in Vietnam. He was broken. And those two hung together like grandfather, grandson for the entire 3 days. And I tell you what, I don't think I can even put it into words. Watching those two guys, like they were family, which they are, of course, in the Marines. But they were supporting each other. And what a privilege it is to watch that moment. When I realized what was going on, I just watched and observed and choked up. You know, a grunt U.S. Marine hanging out with a brigadier general. Lost 800 men from a decision he made in one day. And they were both there for the same reason. So probably my point is on that is that let's not limit God, whether you're a believer or not. He can do far more abundantly than we can possibly think of or imagine. And it is extraordinary when we think of moral injury, really what moral injury is about, going against the way we were brought up. You know, if we went to church, you don't do this in church. That's the basic moral concern. You know, if you're brought up in whatever type of household, and suddenly you're fighting hand-to-hand combat, and you know, you see the whites of their eyes, which happened in the Falklands. And you know, I trained a lot of my guys. I trained went there, and I know a few were killed there. I know 4 people who died there. One by friendly fire. The guy forgot the password and they shot him. But I also had been in contact with people that took through basic, contact me in life now saying thank you for the discipline you taught me, because I wouldn't be alive otherwise. So
Wow.
let's not limit God. Please don't think anything less of yourselves, of what you are doing, gentlemen. We're in the business of saving lives. Come on, that's what we're doing. We are saving lives. Too many people are killing them. I don't know if it's still 22 a day, but whatever it is, 1 a day, 1 a week is too much. It really is. And it breaks my heart. I'm dealing with a fellow. Can I tell this story? Yes. I'm dealing with a fellow who's been depressed all his life, absolutely broken. I've been dealing with him for a few years, and I don't know if you know about Switzerland, where they have assisted suicide. He's made his deposit, and he's determined to go there. And I pray that he doesn't. I've been praying every day that he doesn't. He's a nice chap, and I really hope that he may watch this. He's not a veteran, but I hope he may. In fact, I'm going to tell him to watch this. I won't say his name, but breaks my heart when I talk to him, knowing that he's paid the deposit. Doc.
Here's an idea.
Sure.
It may be one of these situations where it's not that he wants to die. Instead, it's that he doesn't want to live. Now that sounds cryptic.
I think you're on target.
But it's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To whoever this individual is, I ask you, okay, is it because you're in so much pain you can't see life offering you anything else? Because if that is the case, there is hope out there. Talk to Nigel. Talk to anybody. Get a conversation going and do that right soon. Hell, do that yesterday. Because you will find it. If I'm onto something here, it's that you don't want to live. There is a way to deal with that pain that seems to be narrowing your focus. Right? You just haven't found it quite yet. Nigel can help you. You people, if there are any, listen to them. And one more thing while I'm at it. You'd be surprised, young man or young lady or whoever it is you are, that in this life, there are people who are willing to line the block to tell you right to your face what you cannot do. Mark my words, there are very few people, on the other hand, who are willing to tell you right to your face what you can do. And that is the group you listen to. Listen to those around you who are telling you what you can do, what you are capable of. Follow their lead, follow their bliss. Do I make myself abundantly clear here?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And this is camaraderie. This is what it's about. Because we are being recycled to help others, and we all have various skills and gifts, and when we apply them to each other, have a think tank like this, that might just bring him back from the edge.
And talk about bringing people back from the edge, Nigel, and as well, some of the things that we've been talking about, as far as not letting the enemy win or still have control, talking to people, opening up. What guidance or advice would you give someone that before whatever situation happened to them, they were really strong in their faith, right? And it could be outside of combat, right? I mean,
Sure.
I don't deal with a terminal illness. I don't deal with stage 4B cancer, right? I don't know what that's like, but I saw my grandfather go through pancreatic cancer in his life and because of it. So when we when we have people that are dealing with these circumstances in life, that now they're questioning their faith, right? So they're living with a constant physical pain, right? A constant, maybe they live in a very abusive household, right? Where basically every day they wake up, they're getting beat by a spouse, or if they're a child, by their caregiver, right? Someone, um, someone that's gone through sexual assault, maybe not even more, not even once, but might have been raped, 2 or 3 times in their life, right? And they're very devout in their belief, and they've prayed, please help with this pain, please help with these feelings, with my mental state. um but maybe they're it and I've heard the answers. God works in mysterious ways. Maybe God's speaking to you, you're just not listening to it correctly. So I've heard those. But really, like, when you meet someone in that despair, in that very desperate state, to the point where they're saying, you know what, Nigel, and pardon me for this, Nigel, your father, but fuck you, dude. He's not there. She's not there. I, I've I've had the biggest. I've been the most faithful person, and why me? Why is this? And being a human being, I've heard this before. I actually live with someone that deals with this type of pain, right? I don't give an advice because I don't go into the same um, religious beliefs as that person, right? But yeah, how can we reach the people that are, that also have lost their faith in our great Creator, that can do the most awesome and most powerful things? And you're like, even I would look at that person and be like, man, look, dude, if there is that judgment day where we're all standing in line and waiting to be told, like, I'm gonna be like, hey, let you go before, or actually let me go before you. That way the standard isn't so right? Like, I see him and I'm like, man, those are very devout Christians, or devout, believers in their faith.
Mm.
You know,
Well,
how can we help reach them?
let me try and respond to that. First of all, it's been a very long time that somebody actually said Foxtrot Oscar to me, but thank you for that. But as a priest, I don't say that. I say go forth and multiply, which is a much politer way of saying Foxtrot Oscar. um, what I think of immediately is a heart surgeon that contacted me recently, and the look in his eyes on Zoom. He'd already had 3 surgeries. He had urethral cancer. He had 3 surgeries, and I spoke to him on Monday, and this is about 7 weeks ago ish now. I won't say his name or where he's from. So as a surgeon, he knows what he's in for. So the surgery on Wednesday, we were talking on Monday, was to remove his bladder, his urethra, and his penis. Everything was going to be removed. And in the Zoom session with him, there was nobody at home. His eyes were blank, like he'd lost the race. His wife was a very amazing woman, really. Gosh, I was very shocked at her sustenance with her husband. It was absolutely beautiful to behold. So I prayed like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I went for it, as I always do. But in this case, it really struck a nerve. So anyway, we prayed Monday, Tuesday came and went, Wednesday came and went. Thursday I got a text from him saying when they did the surgery, they couldn't find any cancer, and he woke up intact. They didn't remove the bladder.
Amen.
They didn't remove the urethra, and they didn't remove his penis. And I can tell you, we had a quick Zoom, and it was like the lights were switched back on, But going back to your question, also I would add to the fact that I ministered to somebody in the Bahamas who was dying, but he was a bank manager, and he had gone with one of his clients who was very wealthy and who he liked very much, was single, who had decided she was going to go to Switzerland. So he thought he would be very kind and join her. This woman had destroyed her 2 perfectly healthy dogs and had them cremated, and flew to Switzerland with their ashes. They landed. They were taken by limousine to this area of, this nondescript area. They came to this building. They went underground. They got out of the limo. They went into this huge area where there was a house built in the middle of it. There's a mock-up living room and a bed, chipped, a mattress. She was told to lie down. She was told to sign a few forms. She took some liquid and died. And he witnessed that. And he said it was the most horrific thing he's ever done in his life. He was Catholic, and he when he thought about it, he thought he was doing somebody a favor, but he was beyond broken and really prayed he'd never done it. And I had a brother-in-law who killed himself, and he tried 13 attempts. So suicide is very close to my heart. And I unloaded a .357 Magnum that he tried to use, which misfired, thank God. But he eventually hung himself. So, when it comes to this, obviously we all take it very seriously, as I am with this guy at the moment who's already paid, and I'm really praying that God will give me wisdom. And thanks, Doc, for what you've said, that, he won't do that. And I've been doing this for 35 years. To my knowledge, I haven't lost anybody yet. But that's not, Go ahead.
I have one further idea.
Sir.
Ask whoever this person is if there's something or somethings, plural, that happened long before you guys ever met each other that's holding him back there. Ask this guy if there's something that happened to you that you've never told anybody before that hurts like all hell.
Yeah.
Tell me now. And the reason why we do this is feeling feelings, experiencing feelings and memories is a completely different experience from putting words to those feelings. And just maybe you can get, if that's what's going on here, and I may be completely off base, that will offer him the relief he is looking for. Because easy to talk to you are, get him to a point where he can finally spill it.
Amen.
And that may be the key here.
Thank you.
Please don't hear that as a guarantee, just a hunch.
Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead.
As if you guys don't mind, I'd like to offer a version of an answer for the question Luis asked for anybody who might be watching this tonight or in the future. So I run a trauma group through our church, small groups, and if somebody was to ask me that same question, what I would tell them is, I can't tell you why God hasn't stepped in and removed it from you, but what I can tell you is I can tell you a little bit about God to help you understand what God doesn't do, right? And if you can remember, if for the Nicene Christians out there who believe in the Nicene Creed, God is the perfect Father. He doesn't want anything bad for us, and just like a human, just like
a Nicene father.
Nicene follower.
Creed.
Nice. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Catholics and Protestants, and it doesn't include some other denominations who call themselves Christians.
Understood. Right. Okay. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, but that's okay. But what I would tell them is, just like just like earthly parents and earthly fathers, right? We don't tell our kids how to live their lives and force them. We don't force beliefs on them. We don't force their decisions on them, right? We love them, and therefore we observe their free will, and we let them have their free will. Absolutely. And I remind them too that the evil that's in this world was not brought here by God, right? And so when you remember that, it's while you're going through pain, God is feeling your pain and feels for you too, but because he's just, right? He can observe perfect justice. He is not going to intervene in your life if you don't want it, and he's not going to intervene in somebody else's to affect yours if it's not part of his will, right? And because he's also graceful, he provides a way for us to heal through that in eternity. So I would tell that to that. That's what I would say to a Christian who's asking that question, because it's really easy for us to, and I've done it myself recently. After losing a daughter, right? I want to point my finger at God and ask why. I don't understand. I don't get it. And then in my more sober moments, what I remember is He didn't do it. He didn't actively take a person's life, right? God isn't actively making us suffer. And so for the Christians that are out there, if you can keep that in mind, because a lot of times our perspective becomes 180 degrees in the wrong direction, and we want to blame God for it. And all God's ever done for us is shown us love. But evil came into this world based on a choice that mankind has made. And that's why evil and all the pain exists. He never designed it to be this way, but that's what happened. And He's provided a way for us back out of that. And He's asking us, He's calling for us to come back to Him, but He won't force us to. And so when I'm hurting, if I focus on all the bad things that are happening instead of running to the Father, I'm not going to find any comfort in it. But if I can remember that the God who created me and created me in His image loves me as much as He loves anyone else or has ever loved anyone else, that helps me to remember to run to Him and look for salvation in Him and comfort in Him. And that's what I would tell that person who's thinking these things right now.
Well said.
I just didn't want that to go without being said.
Yeah, thank you. And we're circling back to, I hope you can you hear me? Yeah, it's reconnected. Yeah. It circles back to, peace on earth, goodwill to mankind, as we pray for man unkind, But going back to the Nicene Creed as a statement of faith, Luis, I won't read the whole thing, but it's, we believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and of all that is seen and unseen. And it's basically a statement of faith. But thank you for reminding me, Nate. That was good.
Yeah, I think like whenever anyone, opens up to me about what they're going through, or like I said, I have someone that close to me that's kind of last couple of days they just been dealing with a lot physically. They lived a very hard life when they were younger. I mean, drugs, motorcycle gangs, lived that lifestyle, turned their life over to Christ, to Jesus, to God. And now I just see, due to physical ailments, right, that in my mind, I'm just like, it's because we're human beings, and some of us just get fucking sick. Some of us get terminal illnesses. Some of us, it is what it is. But seeing someone that, for lack of a better term, the way I see it from someone looking on the outside in, puts a lot of their life in their fate. It's one of those people that I see that, like, just pray to God and He'll fix, or she, whatever you want to call God, right? God will fix everything. And if God doesn't fix, it's because you don't have enough faith. And I think, to me, that is one of the hardest things, right? That someone that lives that way, to just kind of get to them and be like, I don't think it comes down to how much you're praying, or how you're praying, or, to me, it's always like, just because life sucks sometimes. That's why I wanted to get your opinion.
I want to respond to that. And as a priest, I apologize to anybody who's been told that. I am desperately sorry. It's not your faith. When we look at the people who Jesus healed, most of them didn't have any faith. Heck, Lazarus was dead. Come on. How much faith did Lazarus have? He was dead. All right.
And,
I rest my case. But
the person who wrote the majority of the New Testament, right? The Apostle Paul suffered with an ailment that they never really describe. He doesn't get into detail about it.
Right.
But when he's asked how come he hasn't been healed, right? Yeah. He says, I don't know. But he basically is saying, I don't know why I'm not being healed of this, but I know that God's going to use it. He's going to use it for His glory.
I think it was Paul who said, in marriage, there are 3 rings: the engagement ring, the wedding ring, and the suffering. That took way too long.
Well, I didn't know if I was allowed to laugh at that or not.
Paul did not say that. It was just, Being a priest is very funny. When I crack a joke, people, am I allowed to laugh? Is that
That's exactly how I felt.
Well, you know what
now.
I was running through all the epistles trying to remember. I was like, I don't remember.
No, he never said that. Somebody said that. It was probably me, but no. I'm a humble man. But the joy of the Lord is our strength. Yeah, I'm very humble. Did you know that? No, I mean honestly, the joy of the Lord is our strength. And sadly, when we're suffering so badly, where does joy reside? We don't have it. We aren't given permission to have joy. And when I was told that, by a mentor of mine, it totally changed my life. He said, "Have fun." I said, "I'm British. I don't know how to do that." Those two words changed my life. I had to be given permission to have fun. And while we're talking, it's a slightly different direction, but have you ever had a pity party?
Oh yeah.
I have a playlist for it.
Yeah. Exactly. So here's the anecdote to that. Okay, and I learned this lying. I was in hospital. This surgeon was very excited to do plastic surgery on the wicked bed sore I had, 5/8 of an inch deep, 2 fingers wide. I was like Lazarus. I was rotting, and he was going to go in, cut it out, and rather than wait 3 months for it to heal, he could do it in 3 weeks, and I'll be done. Sadly, he forgot to tell he didn't liaise with my pulmonologist. He'd booked the surgery on Monday. Friday, he told me his excitement that it was all ready to go. And I said, let me pray about it. And Saturday he came in. He was furious because he was giving up his Saturday. And he came in and I said, no, because God told me not to have the surgery. So anyway, after he left, my pulmonologist came in, didn't say a word, came in. And when you're paralyzed, when you can just move your eyes around, when you have a trach and you can barely speak, you are totally at the hands of those who look after you. And here's this doctor holding his head in his hands. And he's supposed to be looking after me. And here I am looking after him. I said, you're okay? He said, no. He said he was furious. The plastic surgeon didn't liaise with him. If I'd said yes and he'd put me under, I would have died. My lungs weren't well enough to be put under for the surgery. He would have killed me. And he was livid. And I'm thinking, way to go. But I can tell you, this surgeon came in to look at my wound. He had 2 nurses flip me face down. I could barely breathe. And he went into the base of the spine with his fingers, gloves on, moving around, looking at the wound as if I was anesthetized. And I couldn't scream because I had a trach. I've never, ever been in so much pain. I'm sure you had to do that, but, they would have been numbed. You'd use morphine. They'd be under. This guy was exploring how deep it was, and he was talking about it, And I'm like, just water pouring out of my eyes. I've never, ever been in so much pain. So when he left, I'm left lying there for agony for about 6 hours on painkillers now. But both nurses came in separately and said, that was very cruel. He shouldn't have done that. And I'm sitting there having a major pity party, obviously. Okay, here's the surgeon hurting me on purpose, pushing around in a hole in my spine where my skin is rotten, rotting. And I'm saying, having a major pity party. And then I realized something. Okay, I'm missing out here. Okay, who is the party dude in the Bible? Who was at a wedding? The first miracle he did. And his mother came up to him and he said, woman, it's not my time. I'll tell you who it is. It's Jesus. The first miracle he did was at the wedding of Cana, where he turned water into wine. It's not a good story for alcoholics, but never mind. But, here am I having a pity party. And it's like, what the heck? Why didn't I invite Jesus to my pity party? Which I did. And do you know what? The pain left immediately, gone. And I've never, ever felt so much pain. Can you imagine that? Doc Medic, Louise. Can you imagine sticking your finger in a pressure wound? Oh, anyway. So pity parties. If you pity party,
that sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, it was. I wrote him a letter. He never wrote back. But basically, it was, I forgive you. You idiot. Don't do it again. Anyway.
Wow.
So if you're having a pity party, basically I'm saying invite Christ to the party. Because he's a party dude.
Yeah.
Yes, I could definitely. I guess we can all definitely agree that moral wounds are definitely the deepest ones of them all, right? And then especially once they start affecting your faith and your devotion, right, to our greater being, can make that wound even bigger.
A moral
Um,
wound is increased through the evil one and through the
mhm,
enemy, be it the devil or be it the our our physical enemy that we've had when we were in combat.
yeah,
It's
and
not the
but just like
definition of a moral wound, but it's part of it.
right,
Who we
but
are.
yeah, definitely, absolutely. But just like every wound, right, with
Yeah.
the proper care, the
Yes.
proper nourishment, we can all heal from all our wounds.
You're reminding
Absolutely.
me. You're reminding me of a relatively new machine that they stuck on my pressure wound. There was a wound vac. This is in 2009. I don't know how new they were. So I have this wound vac on it's basically a vacuum cleaner with a cup over the wound, and I watch bits of my body go down this tube with blood, and it's like there'll be red blood and there'll be a white clog of blood. I'm watching it. It's like, oh my god, I'm having my run in life. The whole wound is being sucked out by this vacuum cleaner. It's like, God, oh man, I'm feeling sick talking about it. But I couldn't believe it. And the irony was that one of my years before, I had a picture framing business, and the I was doing some work at this person's house in Greenwich, Connecticut, and the inventor of the wound vac happened to be at a house for Christmas. So I met the guy who, before I'd had the privilege of having one stuck on my lower extremities, but anyway, watching that tube, bits of me going down it, you're thinking, oh, geez. Anyway,
Well,
we'll
there's different ways to lose weight. Let's face it. Okay. That's the first thing. And the
yeah.
second thing is that type of suffering, I couldn't agree with you more, totally sucks.
Oh, oh,
Aren't you glad you tuned in with us tonight?
oh,
Aren't you glad you waited around for that
that's
unbelievably
really
bad
good.
joke?
That's
Thank you,
I'm with you.
Donnelly.
yeah, yeah. We'll have to vacuum
How are
that
you with
one.
you holding on to that?
Jeez. Oh gosh, good one there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
my
gentlemen, we're a little bit past our 2 hour mark.
yes.
So Nigel, I would love to leave these last couple of minutes for anything that you might have pressing that maybe we didn't go over or that you definitely wanted to touch on before we sign off.
I want to go back to 2 Corinthians 10:5. To take captive any thought that is erroneous, is not from God, is from the enemy. You don't need to live your life with this burden, with this moniker, of moral injury or post-traumatic stress. The enemy's done enough work on you, enough damage. It's time to stop it. It's time to say no. It's time to move into a greater joy, a greater peace, a greater understanding. Pity party, invite the Lord to your pity party. May I close with a prayer? Would that be all right? Before I do, I just want to remind you
Absolutely.
how loved you are. I want to say thank you for serving your country. I want to tell you and remind you what a privilege it is to be part of this group. It really is, to help one another, to no man left behind. Basically, we are sitting on the shoulders of many warriors going back to the ancient Greeks, 800 years before Jesus. And when we think of moral injuries and all the other names, and part of my book describes all the other names it's had, it's been a lot of names, but we come to a point when, okay, enough already. I can't do this alone. I need help. But with Christ, all things are possible. So, Lord God, I pray quietly and gently for the believers and non-believers. I take on to believe for your healing, ladies and gentlemen. I take on to believe for your healing. I speak to the moral injury in your mind, the soul injury in your being, the heart wounds of the dreadful losses. I remind you of, no, I don't. I pray for the smells that you've smelt, the things you've seen, the noise you've heard. And I pray that Christ himself would heal you from the inside out. To know this is not a dress rehearsal, this is very, very real. And I want to remind you how loved you are, very quietly. I don't want to be a Bible basher. I don't like Bible bashers. But what I'm bashing is love. I want to remind you how loved you are, ladies and gentlemen listening to this. You are incredibly loved. And this is what it's all about. The greatest commandment: love God, love your neighbor as yourself. And those of you who are suffering tonight, and even those of you who are thinking that just by chance you happen to watch this, if you're even thinking of ending your life, I have 2 words for you. Stop it. You are loved. Don't do it. Don't do it. May that love sustain you. And may the peace of God that passes all understanding keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and of his Son, Jesus Christ. And the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be with you now and forever. Amen.
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 Thank you for that, Nigel. And with that, everyone, we cannot close it out any better. So we will not try to. So please, if you loved what you're watching, subscribe, hit that notification button. We'll hope to see you on the next one. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Hey.
Good night, all.
Hey, cheerio. Cheerio.